Good morning. Probably wondering why I didn't fit the timing cover on this. Well, the reason is that because we haven't got the adapter plate where you can put the flywheel on and then you can put the pin in the back, we don't know actually where top dead center is, do we? So I'm measuring off I need to know the exact peak piston height so we can measure them, so we can calculate the thickness of the gasket. But we're going to do it in a really simple way instead of measuring everything and averaging it all out. That's a waste of time. So if we look down here, wait a minute. There we go. Look at that. Now you can see I've got a dial gauge here. Well, I'll back off a bit. Look, then you can see it a bit clearer. So I've got a dial gauge on top of the piston, right? Now, what I'm going to do is turn this back ever so slightly. You're not supposed to turn it back, but we're going to turn it back ever so slightly, right, like that, look. And then we're going to, I thought that the 0 here would be top dead center, all right? So what we're going to do now is turn this ever so slightly, ever so slowly, turn it, turn it, turn it. So that's where I thought top dead center was. Watch the needle. Goes past, stops, that's the place. Now, you get it? That's an accurate way of doing it without having a pin. We know that is top dead center, absolutely, because if I turn it anymore, it'll go back the other way. You don't believe me? You don't believe me, do you? Oh, dear me. Right, so let's keep turning it. There, you see it going backward? So we'll turn it back, find the peak, there. So really, all you non-believers, so really we should be able to fit our pin in here in the injector pump, and it just won't go in. It's just a little bit off. I thought it would be off. So what we're going to do is back off a couple of these bolts. We've torqued them down once before, and then we're going to get our spanner in here and turn this, hopefully, turn the injector pump there. Now we're going to nip that one down, and then we're going to get our torque wrench and set that to 27. There we go. Keeping our eye on the gauge. That's it. That's all she's getting. So now we can carry on. We know that's right. We can box all this front up today. We've got that bolt tightened up. We've got that one tightened up. The belt's tensioned. Everything's good to go. So we're going to cheat a little bit. Supposed to use a dial gauge and measure each side of the piston to calculate the piston height. You do that on all four and find out which is the highest. Well, we can do, but this is a mag mount and it hasn't got the switchy offy thing. So I'm going to show you an easy way to get it absolutely spot on. We're just simply going to use feeler gauges and a little bit of touch, the common touch. So we can show you on this back one here, but now we know that piston's high. I've got a 30,000th of an inch feeler gauge on here, and I put it across here, and I can't feel any step at all. 30, beautiful, beautiful. So what we're going to do is turn this engine again, swap the gauge around, find the top dead centre of that piston. Magnets. Right, let's get it in a rough position. Right, down far enough. Right, here we go. So we're going to find out the peak position of that. There. See, it goes backwards. There. 30. A little bit higher than 30. Not too bad, 30. So we go across and find them what's in the book. We use 30,000th of an inch because it's easy to work with instead of 0.0 to 0.89 thousandths of a millimetre. Here we have the book, pristine, and it says between 0279 and 0314. It's very accurate, isn't it? Should be a 3-hole gasket. Now I know a lot of people just bang 3-hole gaskets on just because they've got 3-hole gaskets and it's a safe bet. There actually is a thicker gasket, the 0-hole, but we haven't got one. And we're using an L-rig gasket. Now I'm not so fond of these on 300 TDIs. We haven't got much of a choice really because they don't do the multi-layer shim gasket for the 200 TDI. Now let me get set up and I'll show you the reason why. So the problem is the oil hole here to feed the head. Can you see how small the actual hole is? It's really tiny. But notice it's got sealer going right to the very edge. Now if I put this one in close proximity to here, you'll find out that on this gasket here, on the head, on the multi-layer shim gasket, there is no sealer that goes around here. Nothing. Could you put RTV? Problem, because the head has a hollow in it. To compensate, you know, it goes around here, that's where the seat, it's got like a slot. Whereas this is just a hole. And what happens is, or what can happen, is that oil can, under pressure, can squirt out through the sides and it'll dribble down the side of the block. We've found that out once before, we're not going to do it again. So that's the only reason why. So we're going to put this gasket on. It does not need any sealer on it. Alright, it doesn't need any sealer. We'll put it on the right way around. And there we go. Now make sure the dowels are in. You see there, you've got the dowels here and dowels here. Make sure those are in. You don't want it going off. And yeah, it's just a shame about that gasket thing. I mean, we've tried different ideas on these things, but we don't want oil spewing out all over the place. So let me go and bring the head down. Right, so we're just going to take this off again and make sure this is nice and clean. We don't want any bits on it. We want to make sure that everything's lovely and pristine as it can be. You know? Looks good because after this it's good night Vienna. I'm going to put it to bed. I'm going to take a microfiber cloth and just clean the head. No, we used to use some of this awful brake cleaner. I've got the head over here on my wood pile. Desperately running out of space again. Now perhaps if the Lord will give me strength, you can see here what I was talking about. See this slot on the 300 TDI, it's a hole that lines up directly with the gasket. Right, before I drop this, let's get it on Marvin Gaye. Right, if I've still got enough strength, I'm going to lift this head on and try and locate those dowels. There. That's it. I had to take this little bracket off. This is the one that holds the wiring on because it was getting in the way of a bit, so we'll put that back on there. We'll tighten that down in a minute. Yeah, so it's coming on. Now the next thing we're going to do is do the head bolts. Now I'm going to do them in a different way to everybody else. Why? Well, I'll show you. I'm going to use the technique with the HS 2.8. It seems to be a lot better method. We've got a printout here, I think this is on my memory stick, of the bolts. But what they do is they tighten them down to different torques of Newton meters, and then in straight 150 degrees or 140, 120 in order. Now it is a bit complicated, but it's a lot easier than doing the old-fashioned way, where you do a little bit and then you do another bit and you do another bit, you know, like you're going to do 150 degrees anyway, so it does it all in one swoop. So what we're going to do is clear the decks, put the bolts in, but now we're going to put oil on the threads. It's important to put oil on the threads. We're going to mark up the heads of the bolts in correspondence so we can see the ones we've done and the ones we haven't done. And let's get to it. So I had to take the head off again. I hadn't tightened it down yet. And I just wanted to show you something, because as I was tightening it down, spinning the bolts down, I noticed the first three holes, the first three bolts were particularly tight. They weren't free and easy to go down. So I got an old head bolt and I cut a flat on it with a grinder. And you can see by running it down, it cleans out the bottoms of the threads. So hopefully, when we put a bolt back in here, this will go all the way down without any problems. Well, it goes down pretty deep. What's this one then? Alright, that's better. That's better. I'm going to have a look at this one again. There's something not quite right with it. So I took the head off again, cleaned all the threads out. There was a little bit of rust at the bottom. It must have been from when I was steam cleaning. It sat in there and rusted. Anyway, they're all cleaned out now. And the reason for doing it like that was that when you tighten it down to Newton meters or any torque, you don't want the bolts binding. They've got to be nice and free to move in the thread. So we've cleaned them out. But what I'm going to do now, whilst I'm here and get rid of all this mess on the floor, is to put the timing cover on. We know that the pins are out, we've torqued those down, they're torqued down, everything's good to go. So we're going to get the gasket. Now, the gasket was a bit messed up, so I put it on a flat piece of board for a couple of days. I've got some copper grease on this stud here. I've put some Hylamar around this face here, just on this face, because this is where the water pump's going to go, and there's precious little discrepancy for for holding it tight, especially here around this bolt, and that's where water can get in and snap that bolt, rust it up. So let's talk and let's get this on, like Marvin Gaye. Come on, there we go. And I put a guide bolt in there. There's one in there. Now I'll pick that up, put it like that. I've put some odd dobs of Hylamar on, but it started to dry whilst I was messing with that. Okay, that's looking good. So now, again on the water pump side only, we'll put some Hylamar around here, make a nice joint. I just smear it on with my finger. The thing about the Hylamar is if you have to take this off again, it will come off. This side doesn't really need a gasket on it, well, it needs a gasket on it, but it doesn't need any sealer. The sealer just needs to be there to hold the gasket in place. That's what I'm saying, the gasket was all sort of messed up and all over the place. I bet you didn't see that, did you? Well, if you didn't know that. So if you didn't see this, we'll recap. them out on the water pump seal here and here. Don't use RTV. If you have to take this gasket off again, if something goes wrong, then it'll be a bugger to take off. But now we can put our plate on. There, that's on the dowels now. That's good. So now what we've got to do is calculate the bolts. We have a drawing of those for the 200 TDI somewhere. Let's see. The Haynes book's quite good because it's got pictures of everything, and I took this to bits weeks ago. So we've got 12J and 19J, 200 TDI engine. Well, this 200 TDI engine's using the Disco water pump, which was more in the middle, but I think with a bit of messing about we can get the bolts right. So I'm going to sort of do those, and hopefully everything's going to turn out all right. I might just sandblast the heads of these bolts before we put them in and give them a coat of that nice galvanising type spray. Yeah, I think I'll do that whilst I do something else.